Hi, folks. So, a quick sharing of some reflections and thinking out loud following a great visit to Learning Live earlier this week on Thursday and Wednesday of this week. Thanks to Ed and Pauline and the team at the LPI for another really interesting, thought-provoking, and just generally enjoyable couple of days. This echoes some thoughts here from our own symposium of Fosway last week as well, and borrowing again from the brain of Warren Buffett and sort of reattributing his quote. He said in 1979, as I'm sure you're all aware, that businesses tend to get the shareholders that they deserve, and they might cultivate those shareholder relationships in various ways. His concern at that time was that Berkshire Hathaway was attracting shareholders who had only short-term growth interests at heart, and he wanted to create long-term shareholder value and I guess stakeholder value in Berkshire Hathaway and discourage that short-term perspective. But his phraseology was that they want to cultivate that relationship, and organisations do that sort of in various sort of conscious and unconscious ways. I borrowed that phrase here to suggest that businesses get the learning and development they deserve. The reason thinking about this really, I suppose there's been a lot of thought, and this is prompted by, I think, some sort of tougher times and harder budgetary realities for many organizations, a focus on skills and skills outcomes more than design and delivery, but crucially this sort of potential and perhaps now slightly more real disruption of artificial intelligence to that design and deliver model. It's making people think, what's L&D for? What's the purpose? And I think, there's this sort of threat, I suppose, or there's a fragility in that design and deliver model that's been highlighted or revealed by the arrival of generative AI and its content generating capacity. So I think, that there's a thought here that, that a focus on performance will offer that fabled vacant seat at the top table rather than the sort of focus on design, deliver, and distribute, and the infrastructure that supports it. And I think there's something interesting here about this sort of idea that organizations get the L&D they deserve in I suppose the funding models and the operating models and the infrastructure that tends to surround learning and development. And I think one of the things that I thought from Learning Live is this use, and this is nothing new and it's pretty obvious, but L&D is so often described as a function. And I think that's sort of significant. I think there's a real signal there, this idea that L&D is a function, and it tends to be a function of delivery of programs, delivery of content, and support, and managing the infrastructure that supports that delivery. And I think there's this sort of desire, not universal, but a strong desire to be, a performance service, and a service rather than a function focused on performance outcomes. But how much of that stakeholder and business expectation is ready to fund and organize around performance outcomes versus the design and delivery of programs and content? And I think that's the challenge that made me, well, rather perhaps the conversations I had and some of the presentations at Learning Live really made me think about this sort of phrasing the challenge in this way. I think for me, I think the industry does need to emerge as a performance service or a performance industry rather than a design and delivery function. But that is the predominant model. I think there's something interesting here as well about the sort of the commercial models in the market that support that design and delivery, and a rethinking of that's probably needed as well. I think AI will start to do that as well. The idea of sort of licensing AI technologies feels perhaps less relevant as they're sort of metered for use. That's one potential challenge. I think though that there's something around licensing platforms on a per user basis, the SaaS model, but also subscribing to content services on sort of volume over time basis. They're not necessarily, they're input measures. They're sort of infrastructure and input measures. They're not outcome measures. And I think we have a poverty of outcome measures in the industry, and we don't have any real standards for that at all. We have standards for consumption. Perhaps we have some kind of standardization for evaluation, attendance, etc., but not really for those outcomes. And I think there's something challenging there about the infrastructure in the industry to help support that shift to a performance service model. So, what does a business in 2026 and beyond deserve in terms of its learning or performance functions? And I don't think this is a binary thing. It's not sort of content delivery versus performance service. Obviously, there'll be both together and everything in between. I think one of the challenges, and again, it's an ongoing Achilles heel, is data and evidence-based focused decision making and analysis, that's an ongoing weakness. And I think AI, the arrival of AI, is throwing that weakness into sharper relief to me. That this is very much a data driven environment, even more so now. So for my money, I think businesses need to deserve a performance service, not L&D as a function, and not L&D as a design and delivery function. They also need to demand a service infrastructure, and I think need to start looking for market dynamics that support that change as well. So long live the performance service, and I think that's what we all deserve. Anyway, interested to know your thoughts. Is that what you got from Learning Live if you were there? Does these observations echo anything in your circumstances? I'm interested to know what you think.